So a lot of times when we refuse to change, we're actually cutting ourselves off from blessings that we could have.
That's a statement for someone right now.
That's good.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. This is Joyce Meyer's Talk It Out podcast, where Joyce teaches the Word of God in her practical, no-nonsense way. And my friends and I talk through the real stuff of living it, and we hold nothing back. I'm Ginger Stocky with Jay Williams and Aaron Cluley, my wonderful friends who are all in very different stages of life and know the importance of having honest, loving women around you. When we need a little extra help, we call up Miss Joyce, and we just ask her, because sometimes you need to talk about life with your girlfriends. So consider yourself one of us now, and let's talk it out.
Welcome, ladies.
Hey, ladies.
Season 2.
Yay!
Season 2. We have
missed
made
you.
it. Oh, man.
Missed you guys.
I've missed you all.
Yeah, it's been a long time, it feels like.
It does.
You know, and it's not like we usually only see each other when we're here doing the podcast.
Right.
But we've just all been in such busy seasons of life. It's been hard to get together.
It has.
Yeah. I really have missed being around you ladies, so
Yeah.
I'm glad to be back.
You realize how much you need your girlfriends when you don't have them.
It's true.
I needed you guys.
I did too.
I need you all so much. And we're going to call Joyce today, too.
Well,
Yes,
her too.
we need her.
We
Who does
do.
need Joyce?
Yeah.
We all need her.
We do.
Well, what we are kicking off this season with is such a great thing to talk about for anyone. We're talking about change in life and how to navigate it, how to get through it,
Yeah.
and how to make it something that you may enjoy. you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
bring success to your life.
Yeah, that's just what we're dealing with now, even. Like
Yeah.
the change
Right.
of, we were so accustomed to being with each other so much, then, just
Yeah.
not just having that change. That's a quick change that's like, you have to adjust to change all the time.
Always.
So this is super
Always.
helpful.
So what we are doing is we have been going through Joyce's resource, which is just full of what the word says about change. And it's called How to Survive Change. And you can get it digitally. So in fact, right now, just hit that pause button. Go to joycemeyer.org/talkitout, then come back, and we'll be right here waiting for you.
We'll just be waiting. We'll be here.
Silently, which we can never do.
Not at all.
So anyway, we're going to talk about change in our lives and how important it is and how it can be kind of scary. And everyone is so different when it comes to change.
Yeah.
Some people love it. Some
I love
people,
it.
I do too.
I love it so much.
Like some people hate it, and I wish you could see Jay's face.
Because I don't
Let's
really have
love.
lots of choices about change, but if I had a choice, I probably wouldn't change very often.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not a big...
You just stay as...
I like growth, but growth
Yeah.
is different from change. Like,
Yeah, you're right.
It's different. Like, I love to grow, but like change, ugh.
I don't understand.
We'll get into it.
I want to hear about that.
Might need some healing with that.
Don't you think that's very common? I mean,
Yeah.
change is hard.
It is.
Yeah.
And especially if it is not a change that you initiate, that's when it's much more difficult, when the change wasn't your idea
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
have to go along with it.
Yeah, and you know what? I think I used to love change, but I used to be a person that would kind of like fantasize what the change would really be. And sometimes I think it was more of the disappointment of that change not living up to the change that I thought it was going to be. So it's
Yeah.
a deeper rooted thing there. I'm like, ugh. So I sometimes approach situations, even today, that I'm like a little apprehensive because it's like, I don't even want to think it's going to be anything because I don't feel like being disappointed.
Almost like your expectations aren't usually met the way you think.
Exactly.
So better just to not.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So change hasn't always been a great thing for me.
Yeah.
Well, change can definitely be scary, but like you said, it is going to happen. It is
Yeah.
inevitable. So let's hear what Joyce has to say about facing life's changes, and then we'll talk it out.
Change is a sign that we're alive. It's a sign that we're growing. We're born for change. We get bored with sameness. Listen, I'm content, but I am not satisfied to the point where I never want to see any change. Change is refreshing. We even just changed some of the way that we're doing some of the media presentation in the meeting. Some of it we just stuck in a different place just to shake it up a little bit. And I'm over there Thursday night going, what? See? Here's a statement that I want you to get a hold of. Change can be initially frightening, but eventually refreshing. Come on now. Change can be initially frightening, but eventually refreshing. Here's a good example. I got to the point in the ministry where I felt like I just couldn't work as hard as I was. And in particular, I really needed to get rid of a lot of the office work and just really give myself to the spiritual part of the work that God has called me to do, writing and teaching and preaching and studying and praying and things like that, and not, hiring and managing several hundred people and doing all the correcting and all the stuff that goes on with running an office. And so our son, Dan, was working for us, and we really felt like that he would be right to be put in the position of CEO. But he's kind of like me. When he takes over, he takes over. And so he started wanting to make changes, and he was making changes, and I was like, didn't want to change anything. So you see, a lot of times we want to get rid of pressure, but we don't want to give up anything. Or we want to give somebody a job to do, but no authority. Come on, did you hear me? We want to give them a workload, but no authority. You can't create something that I don't like. And so it took a while for me to get from being upset and frightened to being refreshed. Now I love it. I've worked through it. And now I don't have to be there day in and day out. I don't have to be in a 4-day meeting about what kind of computer program we're going to get next. There's so many things now that I don't have to do that somebody else is more highly anointed to do than I am. But I'm telling you, in the beginning, it was scary to let some of it go.
So Jay, let's start with you. What do you think? Because a lot of those things that Joyce was talking about, we've all faced, right?
Yeah.
And change is a big adjustment.
Yeah.
So I think it's easy to think about people, some who are more resistant to change, and some who are probably too insistent. That maybe that's me. But tell me about some of the changes in your life.
And so this is one of the things that with Joyce, I always find myself feeling like, she like that is who I will be, like the way that she thinks, like because even with her saying the line about it initially being frightening but eventually refreshing, my change, the biggest change that I was thinking about was the change from me being at my father's church for all of my life, and then even after I got married, my husband and I both served in the ministry. We were basically on staff at church, and eventually leaving my father's church.
That's a big change. That's a big step.
That was the hardest thing. So if you're a pastor's kid out there, just know, like, I know what that feels like. Yeah. It's not the easiest thing to feel like you're not just abandoning the church, because the church is a family in itself. Like, you don't want to leave a church, and a lot of times you're like, I'm going to be here forever. And I really thought that I would be. But then on top of that, it was my family, my blood family. And
that's security.
Yeah, it was security. It's who, like, when I would, and I had a whole lot of misconceptions of, when I was talking to God, I would seek counsel, but I was seeking counsel from my family, and then, so it was kind of like intertwined with my relationship with God. So I was like, do I even believe in God now that I'm leaving? It was just a lot of things internally that it was just difficult. And
so you needed that though
I needed
process all those things.
I know that I would not be the woman that I am today if I had not made that change. Now, that change was over probably about 10 or 15 years ago now. But it was a huge tear in my family. Like, my father was
that the hardest part?
That was one of the hardest parts, because my entire family went there, and it seemed like I was like the prodigal. Even though I was following God, my husband and I believed that it was God, and we knew it was God, and clearly it was. Years later, it was. We look back and say, oh, it was God. But like that initially frightening, but eventually, refreshing.
That's such a great point, because I think of all of those friends who are listening right now who have made a change, but other people don't see it or agree with it or think they should have made that change.
Yeah.
So how would you encourage them to
I mean,
Keep going.
Like, seriously, it's kind of cliche to hear this, but trust God, trust that knowing, trust that peace.
Yeah, that's
because
huge.
literally, I felt like even during it, I knew that I had listened to God. I knew it was God that told me to do it, but I felt like I was disobeying God because that's what everybody was saying around me. And so I was torn between what people that I love said versus what God said. You have to just stand on what you know. That's why it's important for you to have a personal relationship with the Lord for yourself so that you can listen to God. And that time was hard for me because I didn't have the comfort zone of talking to my family. I didn't have the comfort zone of just calling my mom and my dad. Like, I had to really glean, and I felt abandoned. I felt alone. I felt isolated. But I did have that peace of God. Your relationship with the Lord supersedes any natural relationship.
That's the one thing that doesn't change, isn't it?
It doesn't change.
Yeah.
And even now looking back, I can almost confidently say that my mom's probably listening to this podcast now, you know, and she looks back and she's like, I'm so proud of you for making that choice. I'm so proud.
That's
I mean,
really
it
cool.
was hard for years. It was difficult. But it was just detrimental almost. But I mean, God has really shown himself strong and proven himself to me through that.
I think that's one of the hardest things is when you know it's God that's told you to make the change. So you guys chose that, but yet you face opposition. And so you kind of expect that if God's going to ask me to do something, it's going to be easy because he asked me to do it. And so often
that's silly.
that is not the case.
And maybe that's why I don't
I
like
wish
change
it
very
was
much.
that way.
Because
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is a great idea. Because honestly, my initial thing that got me out was an opportunity to tour, you know, and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to be at church all the time. And I was just like, I think this is the season where we need to step down and follow God and do it. And it was like, oh, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to tour the world and be a musician. It's going to be fantastic. It was a Christian band too. But yeah, it wasn't. I spent a lot of time on the road crying because I just wanted to talk to my family about the experiences I was having. It was just, I couldn't. And so it's not always easy. And maybe that's why even today I'm like, I don't like change. Well, because I mean, it's hard. It triggered a hard time of my life, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But hold on, you'll end up in the right place.
You'll end up like, I wouldn't even be here. You know, like I wouldn't be able to be talking to you guys. I wasn't really listening to things like Joyce Meyer. I wasn't exposed to, you know, different ministries, like the place even where I'm at now. I didn't even know that world existed because I was so tied into where I was, which was good for that season. Like, but now I feel like, you know, Jasmine and Aladdin, a whole new world. A whole new world. I knew you were going to sing it. But I wouldn't have you guys as friends even if I didn't.
And that would be sad.
That would be
That would be the saddest part of all.
You know, so so you eventually get refreshed by the fact that you trusted God and obeyed him and made that step.
You got to be able to, which is super hard in the moment, but be able to like pull yourself out to get like a higher perspective that this is
it is really
this is hard right now. But if I know that God told me this, then something good is coming in this season of change. But
Tell us about one of your seasons of change.
mine is like Jay, and we did the same kind of thing. We were here in St. Louis, and my husband and I were both part of Joyce Meyer Ministries working, and we knew that God called us to go back home to Oklahoma.
And it ripped out my heart.
Telling Ginger I was leaving was the
terrible.
hardest thing I've ever done.
How did you do that to Ginger?
I don't know. It's all about me.
I could cry now thinking about that moment telling her. But we knew God called us, and so we did it. So I had that peace knowing that God was in it. But we left, and it was one of the hardest seasons that we've ever walked through. And I went from this place where I loved the work that I was doing, and I worked with lots of people, and I was busy, and it was a good place, to now we were home, and I was working from home. I was by myself all the time at home. Then I would travel, and the traveling part was wonderful, but then I was by myself a lot on the road. And
As part of your job.
As part of my job. Yes. I didn't just leave by myself to take trips alone. I was working.
I got to get out of here.
I just got to drive.
Peace.
Sometimes. No, so I was traveling for work, but I was alone a lot. And as I discovered as an extrovert, I couldn't handle it. And so I was almost to a feeling of depression just because it was so hard. But I kept reminding myself, Aaron, you know God called you to this. So there's something in here that he's doing. I don't see it. But I knew there was something in it. So we just hung through, and it ended up being a really good season for my husband and I. And looking back, we then have since come back to St. Louis. I came back to Ginger. I couldn't stay away.
You, Jesus.
She's like a magnet. Sucked me back in.
Sound effects.
If I go too far away from her in the building, I just sort of get a draw back to her. But during those 2 years that we were gone, it's like I knew that there was a reason for this season, and I knew that we were listening to God, but we could see none of that, and it was hard.
But looking back is
so different, and I can see God's hand on all of it. Like, I needed to go there to grow as a person. Me and my husband needed to grow as a couple. It was good for our family.
Yeah.
Now we are different people coming back, stronger to tackle whatever he has for us here. But had we skipped the hard part, we would have missed all that.
Yeah. Well, change can be so difficult in a lot of different ways, and especially the ones that challenge our trust and our faith, those things that you're talking about. So let's hear what Joyce has to say about those changes that really make you question life.
Yeah.
Now, during change, when God is dealing with us and working in us and working on us, emotions are very undependable during those times. That's not a good time to make a serious decision. And if you don't believe me, just talk to a woman that is in the change. Don't you think it's interesting that that's what the world calls it? Well, I can't help it. I'm in the change. Oh, yeah, listen, men go through one too. But different things happen to them. They start going to the tanning spa. They want to buy a sports car, and I don't want some new facial hair or something, you know, they like trying to look young again. And women just go crazy. You haven't lived till you're in the car with a woman who's a little bit upset already and has a hot flash. At night, I'm throwing the covers off, and Dave's trying to keep them on, and I'm rolling down the windows, and he's turning the heat up. Because change is something we need and want, but it's not always easy. For one thing, we want change because we're not fully satisfied with what we've got. We want something new, but we don't want to give this up, because whatever we're going to have, we don't know what that is yet. And the thing about God that is so aggravatingly interesting is that he won't show us what the next thing is normally until we let go of this thing and take a chance on having nothing. That's what it means to fully depend on God. Amen.
So when you talk about fully depending on God, it's that trust thing. And so, you know, I've been looking up scriptures about trust because we're in one of probably the biggest changes of life maybe that I've ever seen. It's just been a year of change for our family.
Yeah.
In fact, this very week, our baby daughter is she's finishing up her classes for her doctorate, and she's moving across the country and joining the Navy.
Yeah.
And it's just, first of all, she's so far away, I can't reach her. And, you know, we're getting ready to drive across country with her. And, of course, this year we had our first grandbaby, and as wonderful it is as it is, and it is, she's so awesome.
She really is. I saw your Insta
Precious.
stories. She's very, very
Thank
cute.
you. But it's still, it's change. And change is hard for everyone in the family. It's just an adjustment. And then I got to be real with you guys. What Joyce was talking about, the change. Okay.
She's talking truth, Ginger.
I know.
Should I break out the fan?
There's usually a fan on me. I know you girls don't understand yet. So I want to impart these things to
Give
you
us all
so
your
that you're
wisdom.
not surprised. And I know that some of my girlfriends out there listening are like, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. But anyway, so it is not a pleasant thing. It's just not. And And I have been a cold person all my life, not emotionally. I'm very warm.
Your heart is not dark.
I'm not cold-hearted, but maybe cold-blooded because, I'm usually cold and I still am. But then all of a sudden, like literally in an instant, I'll be so hot that I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
And so you're cuddling under the blanket watching TV and you're so happy and cozy and then you're throwing everything off and Tim, my husband, is like, what's going on? And he understands now, but because he doesn't like change at all. So we have to balance each other out there a lot. But like today, sorry, it makes me laugh. Today I wore a jumpsuit. Okay.
Okay.
So
Nothing
let's
good
be
happened in a
real.
jumpsuit.
Talking about wearing a jumpsuit when you've had a couple children, okay, and you're getting older, you have to plan a good half hour ahead to go to the ladies' room. If I'm going to go to the little girls' room in a jumpsuit, I need some time to
That's why
prepare.
you said you needed 20 minutes. I was like, what's she going to do in there?
Because it takes a while, and your body responds differently when you're going through. It does, because for some reason, when you walk into the bathroom, your body sees the toilet and thinks it's time to go. It's okay, let it go. No, body, you have to wait until I am prepared with the jumpsuit.
It's a process.
I went to a trampoline park. I'm not in the change, but I've had babies.
You understand?
I went recently and I was jumping. I thought, oh my gosh, I have to stop right now. I will pee all over this right now. So I just got off really fast. And then people are like, what happened to Aaron?
Have y'all seen the memes though, real quick? Like the Instagram memes, like when you're wearing like a jumpsuit and you have to go to the bathroom, you're just sitting there like, oh.
They're so true. Kegel.
You feel so good. So you gotta pee.
It's all cute until it gets real in the bathroom.
So as much as I love change, I'm not loving this one.
No.
But if I think about being a leader and being a creative, change is part of what sparks creativity. It keeps things fresh.
Yeah.
And I love to think about change as an adventure. So there's always all that. But you have to be really aware of other people around you because as a leader, too much change, which I can very easily do, makes people feel unstable.
Yeah.
So how can we help the people who are leading, our families, the people in our church, not to feel like they're constantly teetering because they don't know what's going on?
Yeah, I've learned that so much from you because at work I love to problem solve and I just love to get in there and what can we do and fix it. And so I want to get her done right now. Like if we see a problem, let's just take care of it and move on. But you, Ginger, are so good at taking a pause and a breath and just thinking before you act too quickly to make sure that it's the right time. And I really appreciate that because that's not easy to do for those of us who like change.
Well, and it's because I've done it wrong a whole lot of times. You
Yeah,
learn
it's
through
true.
those things.
And like I said earlier, I'm not a huge fan of change, but every job that I've gotten, I've been kind of assigned as like a change agent to an extent, and it's never been.
It's interesting.
And that could also, as I'm thinking through and talking through it with you guys, it's like maybe that's why I'm always kind of like, because when you're a change,
wherever you go.
yeah, when you're a change agent and you're coming in when things are in transition all the time, it's not always comfortable. It's typically not very comfortable. But what I can say about the current transition I'm in now, I learned from you, Ginger, is like before I went to this job, she gave me this like tips on what to do, and that has helped me approach this change, which hasn't been easy to say the least.
They rarely are.
It has been very, very difficult, but my attitude towards it has been so different in this season, and it's primarily because of the friendships that I have with Aaron. You're so optimistic and bubbly all the time, and then Ginger, you have such a deep wisdom about you that you're just like, try these steps when you go into this next season. And it's allowed me to look at it and change my attitude towards it to have more of an optimistic perspective. I've always been effective in the areas I've been in, but I feel like in this season, I feel better about the change, even though it still seems like craziness is going around, because in transition, it's never usually comfortable. But the way my attitude is towards it, because of like the tips you've given me, and I'd suggested anyone listening, just write down before you go into a change, if you know a change is coming, write down some things that maybe you can do that can help shift your attitude towards it. So
have an action plan.
Have an action plan so you can.
And pray a whole lot.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And trust. Talking about change, Joyce has been through a lot in a lot of different arenas. So let's give her a call.
Yeah.
And
I'll miss
see
her too.
what
I
else she
know.
has to say about this.
Hello.
Hey, Joyce. How are you?
Good. You caught me with something in my mouth.
We're live with Joyce.
I thought, now, if I take this bite of this, they're going to call me.
And we've been waiting for the most opportune moment. I was more
Okay,
worried
well-
about your nails being wet. Are you okay holding the phone?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. The nails have dried. She was at the nail
Nails are
salon.
dried. Food is swallowed.
She is ready to go.
Ready to go. Let's talk it out.
Ready to go.
We've been talking about change, and you were sharing a little bit about some of the changes that you've experienced in life, and Aaron has a question for you.
I do, Joyce.
Okay.
You've been through so many changes, and you've talked about how you've had to transition even in your own ministry of starting it. You started the whole thing and you had control over everything, but as you've gone, you've seen you've had to let go of some areas because you can't do it all. So how have you done that, just to let go of control and trust other people and see that change happen?
Well, I'll probably do it better now than I did in the beginning. I think. I think when you've been a strong leader and you start trying to to let go of things, you probably start by wanting other people to do the work, but you don't necessarily want to give them the authority to do the work.
Yep.
And so the first thing you have to learn, I think, as a leader, when you're letting go of things, is that whoever takes the place of doing whatever you were doing, they're not going to do it exactly the way you did. But the good thing is if you let them shine, they'll do better than you. I just said this past weekend that there was a time when I was preaching at Lakewood Church, and I said there was a time when I did everything at the ministry. I mean, I even remember going to get the mail. And but I said, now I actually could not run the office. Dave and I couldn't, because we don't know enough of the technology that runs everything today to keep it going right, which it's the nature of things. It's the way that things are. You know, you do certain things at certain times in your life. I love what Ecclesiastes says, that for everything there's a season. But a season means that it's not going to last forever. It's going to change.
Mm-hmm. What is your advice for someone who's in a season of change right now that they didn't choose for themselves? Something that, maybe they're not even thrilled with, but it's where they are. How do you navigate that?
Well, the best thing that I ever heard that helped me with that is, if something is changing that you don't want to change, but you can't do anything about it, and you're involved in it, the first thing you need to do is change your mind about the change.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say that something changes on your job. And, maybe somebody new is coming in and buying out the company, and they're going to do things differently than the way they've done them in the past, and you don't like it. You don't like the changes. So you only have two options. You can be miserable, be mad, be upset, gossip, start all kinds of strife, or you can change your mind and say, well, this is going to change, and so I'm going to change my mind about it and just believe it's going to be good.
Yeah, change your perspective.
You have to change your perspective about it, because when we're resisting things that are not going to go away, no matter how much we resist them, it really only hurts us. But change is something that, change is easier for some people than others. I'm probably not as adversely opposed to it as some people are. But I remember the day I was talking to Dave the other day about the last time that I said something about, we might not live in the house we're in forever. And he's like, oh, no, I love it here. I don't want to move. I love this view. And I said, do you remember the last place we lived when I suggested that we move? You said, oh, I love it here. I love this view. And now you like this view better than you did that view.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when we refuse to change, we're actually cutting ourselves off from blessings that we could have.
That's a statement for someone right now.
It is. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Joyce, I have a question for you. Like, I know Aaron asked about when you made the change with the ministry. Is there a way that you can just encourage people how freeing it is, once you do let it go, like the opposite, the next,
control thing?
Yeah, the control thing. Then how much freedom you get. Like, I'm with a bunch of people right now that are in transitions that were resistant at first, but now they're realizing, wow, I have more time. Like, I can do things.
Right.
So do you mind talking about the other side of letting that control go, the freedom side of it?
Yeah, I think the way that I talk about it is there's a difference in what I can do and what I'm called to do. And so I can do a lot of things. I could come up to the ministry headquarters every day, and I could do all kinds of things. And a lot of them would be things that people might think, yeah, we love that you're doing that. But it's not what I'm the best at. And when we started out in the ministry, we had to do everything, whether we liked it or not, whether we were that great at it or not. I mean, it was just me and Dave, and that's how we started. But now I'm at a point, and it's happened gradually over a long period of time. We handled everything for probably the first 20, 25 years. And but now I'm able to give myself to what I'm absolutely gifted for and the best at. And so that's communication, whether it be verbally or in writing. So I give myself now to study and prayer and writing and doing my television and doing things like this, which I'm still communicating. and it is freeing. I was just thinking today about how nice it is to actually have time to have a day where I don't have to work every single day, where it's okay to just rest and be quiet and sit and think. And I think hopefully, some of the best creativity will come out of me in the next few years because I'm not busy doing things that I can do, but things that I'm not really called to do.
That's awesome.
That's really good.
And if you hadn't been willing to make that change, you wouldn't have those benefits now.
Right.
So,
yeah, and some of them I made them easier than others. The last go around I actually should have let go of some things before I did, but I was persistent in doing them, and I ended up getting sick and didn't have much choice. And so a lot of people just, because they don't know how to let go of things, they do end up hurting their health because they won't let anybody else in the world help them do anything. And God really intended for us to need each other. That's why we all have different gifts and different skill sets.
right.
And I think pride a lot of times keeps people from wanting to let go of something.
Yeah,
They're
that's
afraid
really
somebody
true.
else-
Totally agree.
They're afraid somebody else might be better at it than them, or they're afraid somebody else will get a little attention or a little bit of the credit that they used to have. And to here again, I guess you can either just live worn out, stressed out all the time, or you can be willing to let that happen.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Joyce. We appreciate it very much. We
you're
need
welcome.
that wisdom.
That was good.
Yeah, so good.
All
I'll
right.
go back to my eating.
Yeah, go finish. Go finish whatever you're munching on.
Hey, Joyce,
Thank you.
what color nail polish did you get?
Oh, it's. I actually think they may have put the wrong thing on me. It's
Oh,
red.
no.
Now that I look at it, it was supposed to have a little bit of purple in it.
Well, change is good.
Change is good.
Yeah, change is good. Right. So see, now I just have to change my mind and say, you know what? That's not what I thought it was, but I have it, so I'll like it.
All right. We'll talk to you later. Love you.
Thanks. Love you guys.
Bye.
You know, all the things that she was talking about, it just reminds me, because the control thing is definitely an issue for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
hard.
It's real. But it's all an illusion anyway. Control it's never real. It's just an illusion of control. And if we can let go of that,
Yeah.
then it really does help change not only go better, but be more effective. Like not only easier for you emotionally to handle it, but the results of the change will be easier too.
Yeah, that goes into that whole thing of me saying before about optimism and like I would think that it's going to be that this outcome is going to come of this. That was me trying to control the outcome, you know? So the more that I relinquish control, trust the Lord, let go, and just go for the ride and trust that God will order your stuff.
Let it go?
We're just on the ride. Let it go. Let it go.
We should stop right there.
Everyone's saying
I'm gonna cut you off now.
change the podcast. Well, we've been talking about with change, again, you can hear more about this from Joyce. She has a teaching called How to Survive Change. It's a good title. It's available digitally. So go to joycemeyer.org/talkitout. You can get it there. And also, if you want to learn a little bit more about us, listen to other podcasts, you can do it all right there. And we have a great second season coming up for you.
I'm so excited.
It's so good.
We're going to talk about so many fun things. Our next topic is a really big one, and it's one that's really close to Joyce's heart, and I'm sure is going to impact many of you who are listening, and that is healing the soul of a woman. Yeah, it's a big one.
It's a big one.
But it's so important, and it's not only about lives changing and hearts being healed, but it's just about the daily stress and the things that wear on us. So don't feel like it won't apply to you.
Yeah.
It will apply to everyone.
It applies to everyone.
Yeah, who's listening.
I think that's a really good note just going into next week, that even if you feel like you don't have some major story of something that's happened to you, we all have things that have happened in our daily lives that have affected who we are as women. So we all got stuff we need Jesus to work on.
Very definitely.
Yeah.
And if you go to joycemeyer.org/podcast, you can see where you can get that book that we'll be talking about for the next few weeks also. And then after that, we're going to talk about relationships. So we're going to talk about friendships and marriage, and it should be real and down and dirty.
Down and dirty.
Just like a jumpsuit.
Perfect timing, Aaron. Perfect timing.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Well, thank you all so much for being with us. It's so good to be back together. And don't forget to check out our Instagram stories.
It's going to be fun.
Season 2 is going to be great. We want to have you along for the ride. We'll talk
join
to you
us,
again
ladies.
soon.
Bye, ladies.
Bye.